Hello everyone, welcome back to The Interview. I'm your host, Susan Lee MacDonald. I'm here at the K-Notes Applied Music Studio, and here is where the rock and rollers of Korea train to become the best of the best. Well, I'm going to meet with Se-hwang, who is world renowned for being an incredible guitarist. So join me now for an exclusive with him. Come on in. Se-hwang, I'd like to welcome you to The Interview. Thank you so much for being my guest today.
Well, thank you for having me, Susan. It's really great to be here.
Oh, you know, there are so many people who love what you do as a guitarist, and I'm pretty sure that this is going to be a really fun interview for me because I love music and I love your music, and the chance to get to talk to you about your life, career, what brought you here is going to be super thrilling.
Well, it really is an honor to have you to talk about what I've done all these years.
Well, so I've got to say, recently you've had something really cool happen to you, and the MI, or the Musicians Institute, just gave you an honorary doctorate. Is that right?
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about that for those who may not know what MI is?
Well, yeah, well, certainly. MI, or Musicians Institute, is a contemporary music college established in the 70s, located in Hollywood. And it's represented the education of contemporary music ever since then. And so many world-renowned musicians have come from the Musicians Institute, like Paul Gilbert, Scott Henderson, Frank Gambale, I mean, you name it. I mean, there's just so many. And what happened to me, honorably, is that I got to receive the Honorary Doctorate of Music in Performance. And according to what I've heard, I was the 5th recipient after Herbie Hancock, Steve Vai, Sheila E., and Alice Cooper.
I mean, in the company of some of the most important names in modern music.
It's unbelievable.
And you're the first Korean, first Asian to be a part of that group. How does that make you feel?
Well, frankly, I mean, nothing in this world is easy. No matter what part of the world you're at, doing whatever, you have to have the passion to do it. And I'll be really honest, I feel very lucky. I feel that if this was happening, and what I mean by this is that if the Western world started paying attention to the Far East music culture, and including like automobiles, phones, computers, air conditioning, like these vast, various fields of society, if they were opening up earlier on, it would have been somebody else. That's how I feel, or if it was later on, it would have been somebody else. It's just, I feel very lucky that timing really was there for me. And I also feel lucky that I got to do music with so many great partners over the years. And well, we became great friends, and they were like giving out great words about me, I guess, in the industry. And well, surprisingly, I was the first one to actually like perform for the crowds in America as a guitar player in America. And I was surprised that the majority of the people said, you know, hey, this is the first time I'm seeing a Korean guitar player or Asian guitar player. And well, in a way, I felt, whoa, this is a shame, because it should have happened earlier on. But well, see, that's one of the things that I really feel lucky about, and I'm glad I didn't give it up.
Yeah, definitely. Se-hwang, here in Korea, most people who know music, they've heard at least your name, if not become a fan of your music, or maybe had some certain opinions about the way that you do music. You have really done some very different types of performances than what is typical here in Korea. And what I'd like to ask you is, what and how would you describe your style of performing, and how do you feel that it's been received here in Korea?
For instance, one of the things that I've always wanted to do, especially again because of my mother's influence, was that she was a classical guitar player, and I used to grow up listening to a lot of Vivaldi because Vivaldi Four Seasons was really popular for our parents' generation as a classical music. And whatever hotel, coffee shop you would go to, it's always there in South Korea. So, hey, I thought, hey, that's something that I really have to do. But when I first tried
with the guitar.
Right, with the electric guitar, it's honestly, it's really difficult. It's technically almost impossible. I knew it. It's like turning at a corner at like, you know, crazy speeds, or it's like, I mean, it's just impossible in a way. But I had to work on it, and I did for over 10 years. And I knew
long-term project.
Right. But the most important thing that I really had to do was become good at playing it. So when I thought I was ready, I had met with the professors of Ewha Women's University and Seoul University, and the professors there, they were always backing me up. They were like, oh, you're brave. Yeah, you should try it. So should we rent Se-hwang Art Center? And they did. And they got me the best orchestras in Korea to collaborate. So again, I felt very lucky for that. And when I first started that project on stage, all the classical musicians, they were like, whoa, what's going on?
They've never seen anything like that before.
And yeah, especially if this is Korea and the Se-hwang Art Center with an electric guitar concerto with an orchestra, this is not your routine orchestral performance at such a prestige stage at the time.
And a very conservative group.
Very much so. That was a word that I was not trying to use, but thank you for that. And I wanted to change that. I wanted to change how the people thought, because growing up in Washington, D.C. in the late 70s and the 80s, I realized that a lot of classical musicians in the West, they were always aware of what pop culture was all about. They were aware of Michael Jackson, Madonna, and the world's most renowned, well, one of the most renowned, I don't want to be rude to the other musicians, it's just that respected chamber orchestra that represent the Vivaldi Four Seasons is definitely I Musici of Italy from Rome. I got to perform with them and tour with them and record. And I was notified about Dream Theater from them. They were always aware of what's going on with today's music too. So that was one of the things that I really wanted to change about Korea in my own way.
Now, Se-hwang, one of the things that strikes me is that you are an extremely friendly person. I mean, I've just only recently met you, but I feel like there's such a friendliness and kindness about you.
How could I not be in front of a beautiful lady like yourself? So.
That's too sweet. But no, seriously, you're such a friendly person, and I think that most people who know you, you have a reputation for being one of the, well, can I say the sweetest guys, and yet
so much
the persona on stage, you know, you're so intense, you know, the facial expressions and the whole kind of look that you have also doesn't seem to kind of match this super friendly person that I have in front of me. What do you think is the difference? Is there like a stage persona that you kind of get into that's different than the regular guy that you are during off stage?
Well, thank you for all this praise. It just, I have this image on and off stage, which is completely the opposite, people think. But I mean, off stage, you don't have to be a crazy person to be a rock musician. That's how I always thought, because usually rock musicians, they would have some sort of a problem. They were notorious for this. And they actually gained some fame and a lot of acknowledgement because of what they do even off stage, a lot of troublemakers. But I wasn't about that. I grew up in a regular, good family. I don't have any problems. I just like to play guitar. And as a guitar player, I have my persona that I want to express to others, especially the ladies. And in America, when I was growing up, I mean, if you have the chops and if you could play fast and accurately, people liked it. And if you have like a certain performance going on, if you have your knee bent, doing your teeth picking, people love it.
Yeah.
So,
it's a real showmanship factor, right? Yeah.
So that's how I guess it developed naturally, because I started doing that from my elementary days. It's not something that I was trained to do, or like, I try to copy off of anyone. It just, I respected Jimi Hendrix, Eddie Van Halen, Eric Clapton, Jeff Beck, Jimmy Page, Steve Vai, Joe Satriani, Akira Takasaki. I could just go on all day. And I was just naturally influenced by all these great musicians. And that's what I did. And I guess that's especially how the Korean society, they view me, to be like that.
But let's go back to your younger days.
Okay.
As a child, you were born in Korea, but because of your father's work as a diplomat, you went to Washington, D.C., is that right?
Right.
And so from age 4 until you were in about 8th grade, you lived in McLean in Virginia. So
Yes.
actually, it's my home state, too.
Oh, all right. Hey, neighbor. All right. So quite a great neighborhood to grow up in.
It's a great area, and yet it's very interesting that your father, who was a diplomat, arguably a very conservative, very strict type
Very
of work.
much
And here, he's married to a former guitarist, your mother, and there you are at a young age, grabbing the guitar and playing. Was there any opposition from your father? Like, did he not want you to play with the guitar growing up? Or did he think that it was just kind of a phase?
Well, he thought it was a phase. And he always wanted me to like do whatever I wanted to do besides music. Because, I mean, diplomat in the 70s from South Korea, come on, conservative all the way. So, and I hate to say this, but we have a term in Korea called dantara, which means like a low-class musician, a hungry, beggar who does music. And that was like the social impression that the majority had of the musicians at the time. But you're not always like that if you're a star or if you're popular and sell a lot of records. So you don't have to be that way. It just, I guess it was a social impression of the people who couldn't make it and who were just trying to, and who were just trying to make their ends meet. And I understand it, because every musician, including myself, we've all been there.
Yeah.
It's not easy. You have to put all your energy into it, and you just have to pray that it's going to work. And I guess my dad was worried that I wouldn't be stable, if you will, because I guess if you get to a certain age and if you have a child, even myself, I would want my kids to have a stable life. So I could totally understand that, as a parent.
Yeah. And so growing up in more or less a strict household, but you still played the guitar. Do you remember the first time you ever picked up the guitar, or young memories of you playing?
Yes. I have the picture of my mother playing the classical guitar in the 70s. It just, my mother had a Yamaha classical guitar in the 70s in Washington, and it was a very nice guitar. And she would play it, and I would just repeatedly see what she's doing. And I didn't have a baby guitar at the time, so I would just grab hers and just play her guitar and just try to copy what she was playing.
And you were how old at that time?
4 years old.
4 years old. That guitar must have been so huge for you.
It was like,
could you even put your arm around?
So basically I was just standing and my figure was just like this.
Wow.
So, right. And later on, when I first got my contract with Yamaha for the endorsement in 2006, my mother was like, hey, way to go. Because that's where everybody wants to go. It just, now, so I represented now. I'm very proud of that too.
So as a young child, you started playing the guitar, and did you take lessons from your mother? Did she teach you, or how did you start to learn?
Well, I did receive theory lessons from someone besides my mother for 1 year in my first year of elementary. And I learned about piano, forte, like sharps and flats, and do, re, fa, sol, la, si, do, from that teacher. And besides that, all the music things that I was doing with my mom, it was just playing around. It's like playing with Legos. We just had a classical guitar and an audio, and she would practice out of something that she heard. And one of the music that she fell in love with was, thankfully for me, was 70s Santana.
Oh,
Carlos
wow.
Santana, when he was performing Europa, Samba Patti, Sunflower, and she was really into it, that she would try to copy Carlos Santana's Samba Patti and Europa on the classical guitar, but my mother would have a classical guitar technique on the other hand, where Carlos Santana had the electric guitar, the method of playing.
I see.
And the other guitar player that she really insisted that I fall in love with was Jeff Beck. And this was the album Blow by Blow and Wired. And I'm thankful that my mom got to tell me about it instead of some radio show like all my other friends.
Yes.
My mom was like, "Whoa, son, listen to this. This is awesome." You know? So, I mean, how many households can you have that going on, especially at that moment, you know?
So Se-hwang, I want to learn a lot about your entrance into the music industry here in Korea. So in 91, you started your own band, correct?
Yes.
Okay, tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, it was a band called Downtown, and the members were Chung Han-jung on bass and Lee Chang-hyun on drum, and now I feel very lucky to have met them at that occasion because these two people have really become important people in the industry now, even now to date. Well, I'm not ashamed to say this. I think we have a record for having been disbanded or not being contracted by all of the record companies at the time. There were 24 record companies in Korea at the time. We've met all of them. Everyone said no. And the main reason was, number one, because we had long hair. And number two, the guitar sound was too harsh and it was too loud.
Nothing like what Koreans had seen prior.
No, the Korean popular music at the time was totally against that. It was, even now, the slow tempo K-pop ballads are popular, but it was very similarly popular at the time as well, along with some dance songs, because we're talking like the entrance of Sateji period. And even, I know it's kind of shaming to even mention this, but there was a time period when singers couldn't even have earrings if they were a guy. So it was a very conservative, social, environment at the time. So the loud electric guitar sound was totally unmarketable at the time, according to the record companies at the time. So
did you find yourself performing anywhere? Were there still people who wanted to come and listen, like the young people?
Yes, we were performing all the time. It just, at first we started off with less than 10 people. We had less than 10 people, and this was in front of a department store. And we realized we had gained, even though it was less than 10 people, they became our fans. And shows continued on, and if we were having shows in Seoul, various parts in Seoul, and in another city like Incheon or wherever, these people would follow our shows, and later on the numbers would rise and become 100 and 1,000, couple of thousand. And right before we had our first album released, we had more than 1,000 crowd always coming to our shows at the time. And yeah, we felt very happy about that. So we finally got our record deal and had it released, and it was doing quite all right, but all right as a band though. This wasn't like your popular K-pop marketing strategy, sales aspect. This was like a new band just starting out. And it was successful at first. And later on, rumors went out that there's a band called N.EX.T. They're looking for a guitar player. And I had some friends around me who told me this news, and I was like, oh, okay, but I was considering it like, oh, it's somebody else's news because they're too popular. It can't be our news, and I have a band. And on the other hand, I guess the leader of the band N.EX.T, Shin-chul, he had asked people around him if there's anybody that they could insist for the guitar spot for the band N.EX.T. And not long before that, Shin-chul called me, and we met. We met at a park. We talked
Just
about...
like at a park, like a regular park?
The Cheongdam Park.
Okay.
We met, we had water, and we were...
Very fancy.
We were talking about the sort of music that we want to do in the future, like, and what we've went through so far. And this was after his absence from the music scene, because he was already successful. And he had like a year absence, and he was coming back, but he wanted to come back strong, but in his own way, which was use that electric guitar sound. So, and he asked me to join in, so I did, and we worked on the albums. And later on, it's just history.
Wow.
Everything worked out. I felt very lucky for that opportunity, even to this date. If that day didn't happen, nothing else would have happened later on. So I do feel very lucky for that day.
How long were you with N.EX.T before you moved on?
Well, I was with N.EX.T from 1994 to early of 1998. And later on, we had formed another band called Novasonic. And Novasonic had continued on from 98 until 2005. And after that, the band N.EX.T had reformed together. So it was from later months of 2005 to 2012, I would say, 2 years ago, right?
So you've had experience with some of the most successful Korean rock bands, and arguably, technically, you are considered the best technical guitarist here in Korea. And but at the same time, being so good at what you do, there's also been some jealousy, I'm sure, but also some misunderstandings that people try to make between you and Steve X.
It's just natural. I'm an instrumentalist. I love Jimi Hendrix. I love Eddie Van Halen and Steve Vai and Joe Satriani. I mean, if you love somebody and respect them so much, you take after them. And this doesn't just happen with guitar players. It happens with athletes, dancers, singers. And if that's the persona that the crowd is getting, then I can understand it. It just, I'm not gonna say that I try to copy him all the time. It's just, I've met him. We had a show together. We became great friends, and I still respect him very much. We're contacting each other, and actually I'm working on a new album with his members, his ex-members.
So you've had such a amazing career as a musician, and being here in Korea, I think that you've definitely had some great highs and probably some lows. If you were to look at your career and say, what were some of the most difficult periods, and how did you overcome that?
I know exactly when. When we were, when I was a member of N.EX.T, we were selling millions of albums. And when I was 24 years old, I could buy any house or car or a guitar that I wanted all my life, but I didn't. I was foolish, I gave it to my mom. I gave my last penny, everything to my mom.
Really?
Yeah.
Why did you do that?
Because my mom told me that's the way to become a good boy.
Even at age 24?
Right.
Wow.
So, and I was living with my parents even then. And later on, that life had continued, and Novasonic days, this is like 1999. Right after the IMF period, Korea was faced for the first time with illegal downloads. And even though Novasonic was like rated at number 5 for a certain song, and we were at like one of the top songs at the charts, there was no income. For the first time in our lives, we were in debt.
In debt?
Right, even though we were at the top of the charts. And this is including having #1 radio airplay of a song that I sung. It's called 그대의 이름만으로. For the reason of your name, just because it's your name. And it was rated at #1 in airplay on radio channel, and zip silt, no income. So that was really hard. So for the first time, I haven't had an offer from a cabaret. If I played one song, every time I performed that, they would pay me, how much is that? $10,000. That's a lot of money for one song, one guitar performance. But no, you know how hard stricken I could be. I rejected that offer because I knew I had some fans, still had some fans out there, and I couldn't let them down. I couldn't make them regret for being my fan who would end up at a cabaret receiving $10,000 every time he plays Love Story. So
you didn't want to sell out, is what you're saying?
No, it didn't happen. Right, but it was hard. I'm being really honest.
And during that time, having gone into debt, despite having #1 charting songs and being so well known, how did that affect you, kind of emotionally or
it was
psychologically?
Difficult, very difficult, because see, even if we're in trouble, we can't show the crowd that we're in trouble. And the entertainment business in Korea is a majority of it has to do with looks. You know, I hate to say it because I'm a musician who plays an instrument, but looks is also a very important part of the marketing strategy. And you can't let loose on getting your new outfits or new haircut. And it's not easy to have that continuing on. And yeah, it was hard. Am I being too honest?
Well, you know, you've touched upon a couple of subjects that I think a lot of people find fascinating, and at the same time know that there's a lot of image making involved with anything. And we've gone from talking about some of the difficulties you faced during the late 90s, during the economic crisis, to knowing that this business is also about image. And I'm curious, do you think that it really is necessary? If someone is a really good artist, you know, they're a fantastic artist, do they really have to have things changed about their physical appearance? And does that really translate into more money for the industry?
The answer to that is really simple, in my opinion. It's just ask yourself, what would you prefer to see in different aspects? Let's say you have a guitar player, and would you just want to see him perform? Or would you want to rather have a guitar player, well, who's younger and more good looking, and wearing better clothes, in a better car? Or, you know, those are aspects that, you know, it's like a routine that the major record companies have come up with. It's now become like a pattern.
Sure.
You know, and it's...
They found a formula that works.
It does,
is what you're
right,
saying.
exactly. But yeah, well, things change all the time, and it's been here for quite a while now, so. I
mean, you're being actually very candid about this, because I think a lot of people in the industry may not actually talk about some of these tactics or things that they do to help promote the image of certain groups?
It's very easy. It's very pure. I mean, everybody has their opinions. Just ask yourself what you want to see.
Very interesting. Se-hwang, you seem to have a really positive attitude about your work, and you seem to really love what you do. And I'm curious, where does that type of self-confidence come from?
Oh, well, it's just me, I guess. Well, I do have my sad days. I mean, you have to have a concert even if you have a problem somewhere. I mean, it's work. It just, I do get this comment from my peer professors at Seoul Art College, because when you are the dean or one of the people running the college, you're faced with more than enough problems daily, and these problems that you have to solve. And sometimes it can be really frustrating at times. And just like, I guess, becoming a musician, you go to a concert hall, nothing is prepared, and people are arguing whose fault it is. And these things happen all the time. But my theory is that, if we're going to do something, we have to get to work and just try to be the best that we can be. And I guess, like, being confident, being happy, well, it helps, doesn't it? And not fighting.
Speaking of guitars, I hear that you have over 200 guitars. Is that correct?
Yes. Well,
not 20, but 200.
Yes, it's I think it's about 230 something now.
230, okay.
Right. And, well,
why so many?
It's an addiction. It's like somebody who can't quit something. I love guitars, and some people love something else. And I guess everything was just relieved through guitars. And it's like whenever I hold a new guitar, it's like a new world is in front of you. And I guess that's how I lived all my life. And even though I don't get to perform like most of my guitars, actually, and because I also have a contract with a certain company to use certain things, but it's fun. And sometimes, you get like prize guitars, and sometimes you are faced with a guitar that you just must have. Or
what are some of your most prized possessions as far as guitars go?
Guitars? Okay, well, the first guitar that I want to mention is a Steinberger GM7T A. It's in red maple, quilt maple, and with mahogany body. And that guitar I bought after doing the dishes for 6 months after I graduated high school at a coffee shop, and doing the dishes, being the waiter, substitute DJ at this cafe. And during that time, when I was doing the dishes, one of the cups it was cheap cups. If you hold the lid for like in a certain way, it just breaks. And it broke, and I haven't cut my hand.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, so I had to like sew it up at an emergency. So that guitar, I really worked hard to get. And after that, I've recorded over 2,000 songs with it.
On that guitar?
Right, with that guitar.
Wow.
And the owner of the company, Ned Steinberger, even wrote me a thank you for using our guitars, because after I joined the band N.EX.T, and that guitar was completely sold out in 1995 and 96, 97, and on. So people are noticing there's somebody in South Korea, if he uses something, it's just completely sold out. So that rumor was passed on to a company called Washburn in America. And when we were working on an album called La Zenka, and we were working on this album in London at the Metropolis studio with the London Philharmonic Orchestra and the producer of Ozzy Osbourne and Judas Priest, Chris Sangritas. And I got to meet this person from Washburn Guitars, and he said, hey, well, this is one of the 40 guitars that's made especially for this year, and we're using it for promotion for different regions of the world. Would you be the one to use it in Korea? And I was like, wow, really? Oh my. So is this like an endorsement after all these years? And this is 97. And he said yes. So that, according to my knowledge, was the first ever endorsement deal for a South Korean instrumental artist from a Western company.
Wow.
And that sky blue guitar, the Washburn P4 Limited, is a very special guitar. And later on, there's a company called Sir Guitars. It's like, Sir Guitars, they were really thankful to give me an opportunity to become one of their squad in 2010. And they had artists like the top of the line, world-class artists. It's like impossible to become a Sir Guitar artist, along with Guthrie Govan and Scott Henderson, Reb Beach. I mean, these people are just gods.
Now you being amongst incredible company there.
Right, and not just that, they provided me with a Sir Se-hwang modern custom guitar exactly to my spec with their technology. And that's the guitar that I use for the concerto for the Vivaldi Four Seasons concert tours and the recordings. And that is an awesome guitar. And lastly, I do want to thank the Yamaha brand is like probably the dream brand that everyone could really think of, even in one time in their lifetime. And I'm just thankful that I'm with them for this decade. And they have released, they have developed a guitar under my name, a signature guitar model, which is the Yamaha Pacifica Se-hwang signature guitar. And they provided me with 2 artist versions. And the first one was the red one. And when I was inducted into the RockWalk Hall of Fame in Hollywood, California on Sunset Boulevard, along with Eddie Van Halen, Steve Lukather, Slash, Kirk Hammett, Eric Clapton, B.B. King, Beatles, Jimi Hendrix, I decided, hey, that #1 guitar is going there. So it's there now. It's in Hollywood. So if anybody's in Hollywood watching this, please, if you have time, please check out the Hall of Fame Rock Walk on Sunset Boulevard and maybe take a picture with your own self.
And then you can go and see your signature guitar there too. So, I mean, for you, this is such an incredible honor. How did you feel when you were able to have your guitar put there and also have your name put down to be memorialized that way?
It's infinite honor. Well, totally unexpected. And I mean, when we grow up as musicians dreaming about certain things, we become to realize our limitations. And we're not really sure as far as how far we could go. And like I said, I respected like all these guitar players that are already displayed there, having grown up copying their songs and just try to follow their path. And I guess following their path kind of worked. And it's very rewarding. It's incredibly honoring.
So tell me about your entrance into working at the Seoul Arts College, and you're currently working as the director of international partnerships and also teaching in the music department. Tell us about how you decided to start working there.
Yes, well, I'm the dean of the applied music department as well, and I started off lecturing at the music departments in 2008, and soon I was approached by the Seoul Art College at the time, and I felt very happy if I have the opportunity to become a professor there, and I would try to give it my all to better educate our future generation. It's just the international collaboration between the universities of America, from Berklee College of Music in Boston and Musicians Institute in Hollywood, and well, there are other schools like Huddersfield University in England, in Huddersfield, England, and it's nearby Manchester. And like we have programs with students preparing themselves for their studies in America, which would include English education and basic music skills for their first preliminary years of music education. And yeah, that's what I'm trying to do, just trying to fix as much as I can for the better of our next generation, because for me, honestly, it wasn't easy. Every day was a task that I was always faced up with. You did say that I'm always laughing, but I'm laughing because I'm just too sad with too much work to do. And but it's rewarding when you accomplish something after, like, you finish an album or a project or a movie, original soundtrack, and it's still continuing.
Last but not least, Se-hwang, you've been so delightful to talk to today, and you've had a lot of insight and wisdom into sharing about the industry in general, as well as your experience. How would you like to be remembered, and what does music mean to you?
Music for me is, I guess, life. It's not something that I make a living out of, even though I do. It's not something that I would brag about for being, let's say, good at something for, because musicians, you're supposed to be good at music. So, you know, nothing to brag about. It's just what I like. It's just what I do. I guess that's what it is.
Se-hwang, I believe that music is something that inspires everyone on multiple levels. Certain songs have that ability to really touch the soul at different parts of our lives, when we're happy, when we're sad. And I know that your music has touched a lot of people, and I'm just very thankful that you are true to yourself, doing what you're doing, and I encourage you to continue to just do the awesome music and sharing of your wisdom with the rest of young Korean musicians too.
Oh, well, thank you for your kind words. This is really grateful getting it from you, Susan. And wow, and I'm really happy that I could be here on this program for this long a time. And thank you for listening to what I have to say. And this was a great opportunity. So hope I made a lot of friends out there in this rest of the world.
I'm sure you. So Se-hwang, everyone, and thank you again. And I look forward to seeing you again really soon performing. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.